Today I'm going to be talking about the effects of stress, anxiety and arousal on sports performance. What is stress? Stress is a substantial imbalance between demand, physical and psychological, and response capability under conditions where failure to meet the demand has important consequences. There are two types of stress. The first type of stress is eustress, and this is a good form of stress that can give you a feeling of fulfillment. Some athletes like being stressful in situations as they like the challenge of putting themselves under pressure and pushing themselves to the limit. This can help athletes increase skill levels and focus their attentions on aspects of their chosen sport. A good sporting example of eustress is having a match point in a game of tennis and winning it in the Wimbledon final. The other type of stress is distress, and this is a bad form of stress and is normally what you mean when you discuss stress. It is an extreme form of anxiety, nervousness, apprehension or worry as a result of perceived inability to meet demands. A good sporting example of this type of stress is being down 1-0 in a football game and you miss a penalty. The causes. The internal stress factors are illnesses like infections, psychological factors, i.e. worrying about something, or not having enough sleep. The external stress factors are day-to-day hassles like travelling to and from games and training schedules. The second one is major life events, for example, a death in the family. And the third one, the environment in which you find yourself in, for example, is being too quiet or too noisy. The sports environment factors of stress are the importance of the event and what surrounds it. For example, coming back from injury or a big cup final game. There's also the stress that surrounds the current scores of the game. For example, losing to a team who you should be beating in the league. The personal stress factors are the social life factors, the home problems, i.e. mum and dad divorcing, or school life, not keeping up with your schoolwork. The occupational stress factors are being unable to relax in your job. For example, dissatisfaction in job role, which means a risk in unemployment. A disagreement with a coach and being dropped from the team can also provide reasons why anxiety levels may increase for sports performers. The symptoms of stress. The first nervous system is the sympathetic nervous system, and this is when we have a fright or our heart rate goes up. Do we fight it and stand up, or do we walk away from the situation? The symptoms of the sympathetic nervous system are dry mouth, increased heart rate, dilated pupils and increased breathing rate. The second nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is once the stress has passed. The parasympathetic nervous system begins to work, and this system helps you relax. The symptoms of the parasympathetic nervous system are a slower heart rate, dry skin, or smaller pupils, and muscle relaxation. Effects on sports performance. There are two main effects on sports performance that create stress. The first is the importance of the event you're taking part in. The more important the event, the more stress that occurs. The semi-final of a cup, or a batsman facing a ball to hit the winning runs in a test match. The second being the importance of the event you're taking part in, for example the World Cup final or the 100-metre final in the Olympics. Both of the effects will have an effect on your sympathetic nervous system, and you will experience the usual signs of increased breathing, heightened heart rate and increased adrenaline. This can impact on athletes' mental state, self-confidence and concentration, and there are lots of examples of this happening in high-profile events. For example, footballers not wanting to take penalties in finals, golfers missing key putts to win trophies. What is anxiety? Anxiety is a negative emotional state that is either characterised by or associated with feelings and nervousness, apprehension or worry. There are a number of types of causes of anxiety, but they are largely caused by the same sources as stress. There are two recognised types of anxiety. The first one is trait anxiety, and is an aspect of personality and part of an individual's pattern or behaviour. Someone with a high level of trait anxiety is likely to become worried and a variety of situations, even non-threatening ones. The second one is the state anxiety. Like trait arises in response to a perceived threat, but it differs in intensity, duration, and the range of situations in which it occurs. People who suffer state anxiety may feel anxious before a game, but settle down during the game, only getting anxious again when it comes to their turn to do something in the game, for example, taking a penalty or a free kick. The causes are, if you suffer from anxiety before a competition, your sports performance will be affected. When your body is tense and blood pressure is high, it is difficult for your body to move in a fluid, coordinated manner. Your actions will be jerky and misplaced, affecting your performance in a negative manner. You may feel fear before a game, be unable to concentrate, have a racing heart rate, and have uncontrollable shaking. The symptoms are, there are three main symptoms of anxiety: cognitive, somatic, and behavioural. Cognitive. This is an anxiety that refers to negative thoughts, nervousness, and worry experienced in certain situations. The typical symptoms of this form include concentration issues, fear, and bad decision making. The somatic, this is the anxiety that relates to perception or interpretation of psychological changes. For example, increased heart rate, sweating, and increased body heat when you start to play sport. These changes in the body's normal responses can really affect the athlete's performance if they do not understand what's going on. Behavioural. This is the person's willingness to avoid situations that cause anxiety. This can show itself in people biting their fingernails, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting, and covering their faces. The effects on sports performance. Anxiety can adversely affect sports performance. Anxiety can be so bad that it can have a massive mental effect on an athlete and their performance in any type of competition. In games that require a great detail of concentration at certain points, such as golf when putting, basketball when taking a free throw, football when taking a penalty, anxiety can lead to lower performance due to reduced concentration, attention levels, and coordination faults. It is not uncommon to hear commentators, especially in American sports, to describe athletes as chokers. In sports that require gross motor skills, anxiety can have negative effects on performance due to factors like freezing and coordination faults. However, it should be remembered that not all symptoms of anxiety are negative, and the body actually benefits from increased blood flow, breathing rate, and respiratory rate. Athletes need to know how to use this understanding of anxiety to their benefit. The definition of anxiety suggests that it is a negative mental state. If not managed correctly, then it will affect the athlete's performance. Constantly worrying about an event can make an athlete think they are not good enough to succeed, playing with their self-confidence, and it can also make you feel like you are less likely to win, which can leave you with decreased expectation of success. Heightened anxiety means increased nervousness, apprehension, and worry, along with the fear of failure. The problem being that once an athlete gets these feelings in their head, there is an increased likelihood of it happening. Heightened fear of failure will result in a negative physiological response like tension and lack of movement coordination, which will have a negative effect on performance. Arousal. Arousal is referred to a psychological state of alertness, and anticipation that prepares a body for action. The relationship between arousal and sports performance is demonstrated through three theories. The dry theory. There is a positive correlation between arousal and performance, which shows that in the linear chart below, there is more that is a skill learned. The more likely there will be a high level of arousal and better performance. However, there is evidence to suggest that arousal only works up to a certain point, and any excess arousal after that is determined by the athlete's performance, as we can see here. Inverted U hypothesis theory. The inverted U theory proposes that sporting performances improve as arousal levels increase, but that there is a threshold point. Any increase in arousal beyond the threshold point will worsen performance. At low arousal levels, performance quality is low. This is described as under-arousal or boredom and might be experienced by an elite tennis player playing a lowly ranked opponent. At medium arousal levels, sporting performance peaks. This can be described as an optimal arousal and might be experienced when a boxer gets themselves in the right zone to perform at their best. At high arousal levels, performance quality deteriorates as shown in the next diagram. At high arousal levels, performance quality deteriorates. This can be described as a panic and might explain why football players perform very poorly when their team is losing 3-0. The third and final theory is the catastrophe theory. Sports psychologists have said that performance does not always gradually decrease as arousal increases, as shown in the inverted U theory. Instead of many top sports people going to pieces in a big event, the catastrophe theory shows a much more dramatic decline in performance when under pressure. Psychological arousal is related to performance in the inverted U fashion when the athlete is not worried or has a low cognitive anxiety state anxiety. If cognitive anxiety is high, this increases in arousal past the point of optimum arousal and a rapid decline in performance occurs, which is the catastrophe. When the catastrophe happens, it is difficult to recover from this point. The effects on arousal. Improvements in decrement. Arousal does not always have a negative effect on sports performance. Some athletes take a positive effect from arousal if taken in the right manner. An athlete can use this arousal in a positive way to prepare themselves for an event. If, however, the arousal is seen as a negative, it can negatively affect performance and the athlete's mindset. This is where the coach should try to get the athlete to see this arousal as excitement rather than negative fear. Generally, it can improve performance. Changes in attention focus. There is a limited amount of attentional capacity available at only one time. The attention capacity that we have at any one time is related to our levels of arousal. When we are lethargic, our capacity is low, but increases as arousal increases. However, if our arousal continues to increase, it begins to have a damaging effect, and research within sports psychology has contributed to our understanding of what's happening. Although the effects of attentional narrowing create a handicap for a football player who needs to be aware of all that is happening around them, it's however advantageous to a gymnast because of a narrow attentional focus enables them to shut out distractions. Increased in anxiety levels. Increased arousal can lead to an increased awareness of symptoms of the state anxiety, which then lead to increased states of somatic and cognitive anxiety. The individual athlete and their reaction to arousal will depend on how it affects them. Choking. This occurs when the athlete faces a high pressure situation and a severe form of nervousness kicks in and negatively affects performance in such a way that the individual will almost freeze at a key moment in competition. The flaws of the three theories. Drive theory. In case of a new athlete, especially a beginner, the dominant response is not always the correct one. Along with this, in high situations of high arousal, quality performance resort to previously learnt skills. Inverted U theory. For the inverted U theory, the graph goes from 1 to 10 and sees all athletes' optimum point is 5, when really, depending on their level, they could vary between 3 and 7. This means that the results do not allow this to be taken into consideration. There should be a range of optimum performance instead of a key point. The catastrophe theory. Out of the three theories, this is the one that is most supported by psychologists, so it's hard to find many flaws. However, the one flaw could be that it's hard to prove that this theory is realistic. Arousal is seen as the increased psychological state of alertness and anticipation of a coming event and prepares the athlete's body for action. Without this arousal, the athlete would not perform at their best, not achieve the targets or goals, and ultimately fail to win their chosen sporting discipline. It is important that both coaches and athletes prepare correctly for their chosen sport and use the positive effects of arousal in the right manner to drive their psychological performance. They can gain a real advantage by psyching up the athlete correctly, which will heighten their awareness, increase the function of their vital organs, and preparing them to perform at the best of their ability. If, however, the arousal is seen as a negative, it can negatively affect performance and the athlete's mindset. On the downside of this, arousal is not controlled by both athlete and coach. It will have a detrimental effect on preparation and the performance itself. The negative arousal can lead to feelings of fear and doubt about the performance and preparation, and can get the athlete to start feeling symptoms of anxiety. Arousal theories and specific sporting examples. Drive theory. A classic example of drive theory was Conor McGregor's UFC rematch against Nate Diaz, Diaz had been previously beaten by McGregor in an earlier fight by submission. However, McGregor used his belief in UFC fighting skill set, his plan to control the fighting with his ability to manage pressure in a positive way, along with a high level of arousal under control, to produce an outstanding fight that ended with him winning on points due to him having a higher level of arousal. Personally, I was involved with Bristol Rugby in an international competition in Portugal in 2016. I believe the arousal drive theory helped myself and my teammates into the final because we controlled our arousal before and during games and trusted both our individual and team skills to come together as a team. With our coach's support, we controlled our arousal between games, which a lot of teams did not, which allowed us to focus on arousal to perform at the highest level and win the final by a close margin. The inverted U theory. This looks at optimum arousal performance, and there are classic examples of under and over arousal using the inverted U theory. Mario Balotelli, playing for Manchester City versus LA Galaxy in a pre-season friendly, was through on goal with only the keeper to beat when he tried to do a crazy back trick, which led to the ball missing the net. He missed completely and was quickly substituted for his reckless attempt at goal. The underlying factors were classic for an inverted U in the fact that it was only a friendly and there was nothing to play for, which led to his under-arousal and this decreased performance. On the other hand, Balotelli showed signs of over-arousal when playing in Italy, built up to major competitions and sees him being reckless and slide tackling players, which leads to him getting sent off the pitch. Catastrophe theory. The classic example of this was Robert Green playing for England in the 2010 World Cup against America. He had been playing really well in previous games and during the pre-season tournament. However, when Clint Dempsey shot from 30 yards out, he probably did not think that it would trouble Green, but the ball took an awkward bounce and Green did not judge it well, and it went through his hands into his net. This sudden dramatic / catastrophe in performance levels is a classic catastrophe theory. Thank you very much.